Thanks to Sith King Zero on the No-P Discord for editing help. Memory transcription subject, Telek, farmer date, standardized human time, January 19th, 2137. Has it really come to this? Am I really this desperate? I was, for all intents and purposes, broke. The last harvest had been terrible, in addition to the one before that, which was practically a death blow for my new farmstead. The debts and missed payments had started to pile up, and I was one more bad harvest away from going completely bankrupt. Like so many farmers before me, I was becoming another victim of the 5-harvest curse. I told you that starting a new farm was a bad idea. What was I supposed to do, brain? Keep working in the office until I died? I sat on my chair surrounded by other farmers who were presumably in similar states of desperation. The room we were in akin to the schoolrooms I had been in as a pup. A desk and whiteboard up front sitting in front of the rows of chairs. Most of the 20 or so figures around me were fellow Venlil, except for a handful of Gojid and even a single Yotul who was sitting in the back, all of us awaiting the start of the lesson. They claimed they had a solution to our problem, that they knew how to increase our yields. How could a predator know how to fix our farming issues? Human. Human. Not a predator. Yes, I know. I'm trying to be better about that. I stopped my train of thought and corrected myself. Ever since the revelations about many of our allies being former predators, I had been making an effort to stop thinking of the world in terms of predator and prey. It was difficult at times, but given that I was working against a lifetime's worth of lies, I thought I was making good progress. But even if predator wasn't the curse it used to be, how could a human claim to know how to fix our farming issues? Even if we ignored the differences between our diets, for all their advantages, humans were still far below our technological advancements. Almost on cue, the door to the room opened up, and the figure of the human who had invited us here entered with an enthusiastic bounce, carrying 2 large cases covered with black cloth. Unlike most, this human was unmasked, its piercing eyes and beaming teeth-filled smile visible for all to see. I could feel the room start to fill with panic. Sure, logically I knew I was probably safe, but seeing the unmasked features of an apex predator caused fear to grip the edge of my heart. I could proudly say I can walk past and interact with masked humans without wanting to flee anymore, but seeing those forward-facing eyes boring a hole into my soul was another task altogether. Come on, you should be better than this. I'm trying, okay? Hello, everyone. My name is Joseph. I'm an ecology student, and I'm here to provide a solution to your farming yields. The human spoke with an unbridled joy, seeming to wait a moment while our translators attempted to explain what ecology was, stopping halfway through and seemingly giving up. You might be wondering why I'm unmasked. Well, we're going to be covering a lot of predatory concepts today, so if you can't handle this, we're going to have bigger problems. Joseph took a moment to broadly gesture to himself, leaving a feeling of dread to start in the pit of my stomach. If this was just the start, what exactly was going to happen here? Silence. Wait and see. Knowing humans, it's probably interesting at the very least. Are you trying to say that predator attacks are a good thing? Are you suffering from predator disease? The Venlil interrupted once again to more murmured agreement, causing Joseph to give a sigh of clear annoyance in response. I wish the Venlil would shut up and just let the human talk. No, I'm not suggesting we airdrop a bunch of Nissa into the capital. I'm explaining how natural systems work. Sapience obviously breaks this cycle, which, if you deviate too far, you end up with something called trophic cascade. The human seemed to wait a moment for the translator to once again fail to explain the meaning of the phrase. I wonder how many basic concepts the Federation lacks words for. Rather simply, the removal of one of these pieces has wider effects, reducing biodiversity and in many cases causing a complete ecological collapse. An example of this is the Dust Bowl effect, something the Federation is well acquainted with. There was a moment before the whiteboard changed before showing pictures of desolate, barren worlds. Without any explanation, I knew exactly what I was looking at. It was one of the lesser talked about aspects of the Federation. The Skivet Grand Herd are a species who go from planet to planet stripping ecosystems bare, devouring everything down to the smallest sapling. This removes important root systems that act as drainage, causing flooding and deserts to form as new plant life lacks the structure to grow. In many cases, these ecosystems are permanently destroyed, turning once lush planets into lifeless husks. I couldn't help but feel sorrow for those planets. It was well known the impact the Skivet had on planets, once thriving planets of beauty. Although if I was following this human's logic correctly, did that mean... Now, I'm not suggesting that the Skivet need a predator. That would be immoral. Joseph cut off the thought I was about to have, seemingly understanding the logical thought many of us had picked up on. But instead, this is a real-life example of damage an unchecked herbivore can have on ecosystems. If the Skivet didn't have FTL travel, they would have long ago driven themselves to starvation under their current society. It's also not the only form of this trophic cascade. Surely this doesn't just apply to prey. Or are you saying prey are somehow inferior? The sound of the Gojid cutting in was filled with an unspoken challenge against the idea, inciting general sounds of agreement from those around him. Surprisingly, however, Joseph seemed to respond positively. That is entirely correct. An overabundance of carnivorous species can also cause their own issues. Keep in mind what I'm describing here is an extremely simplified version. Just the addition or removal of a single species can cause untold damage and harm to the diversity of ecological systems, as the impacts are felt in the most seemingly unlikely cases. With that, the human reached under the desk, taking one of the two covered containers he had brought with him and placing it into view. In Venlil Prime's case, while the impact of Federation thinking has been reduced due to the day and night sides being mostly untouched, you still have the problem of overpopulation of certain species and a lack of reasonable fear response from certain prey species. This has accumulated into the problem you all face. With that, he removed the cover, causing a surge of fear to ripple through the participants around me until we all calmed down at what was underneath. A small cage containing a single red bird busily eating seeds, all farmers' arch nemesis. This is a flowerbird, a seed-eating avian often coming in solid red, blue, or green. They are adorable, dumb as a sack of bricks and food motivated to a fault. They are also one of the biggest causes of farm yield destruction, with these birds alone being responsible for around about 41% of all losses. If we include void pins and other similar wildlife, farms can have up to 94% of their yield destroyed before they even get to a harvest. Everyone in this room was familiar with the cursed avians. While your average city dweller would enjoy the sight of a flock of flowerbirds, the farming community knew of them as a blight that devastated crops. Joseph took a moment to open the cage, reaching inside and grabbing the bird. A small part of me wondered if he was about to devour it in front of us before I tamped down on such an illogical idea. Of course the humans wouldn't. We knew they didn't do that. The flowerbird also seemed completely unfazed about being in the meaty grasp of a predator, simply continuing to eat. I've finally been given authorization to start a trial of this program. Both the UN and Venlil governments are very interested in increasing food supply for both our people. As you might know, we're kinda at war and logistics wins wars. The human paused for a moment, a shiver running around most of the room as he gave a large, beaming smile. So to start, paws, claws, or tails up if you know about the 5-harvest curse. The room immediately was filled with Federation species, all raising their prospective limbs in affirmation. Of course, we all knew what it was. That was why most of us were here. How would the human know about that? Basic research, simple reading, asking literally any farmer. Fantastic. I'm still going to explain it so we're all on the same page. The 5-harvest curse is a phenomenon where new farms on Venlil Prime often fail within the first 5 harvests. On a side note, the coincidental fact that 5 has a religious contention in Venlil culture is neat. I could feel an annoyance start to course through me, that the affliction currently driving me to destitution was being described as neat by the callous predator. I mean, human. Stupid human. Joseph either didn't pick up or ignored my annoyance as he pressed a button. a graph appearing on the whiteboard showing expected yields over time, continuing on in his seemingly endless enthusiasm. So in general, the 5-harvest curse follows a standard pattern of yields, with the first 2 harvests being up to 52% larger than even more established farms, plummeting after that until the business is non-viable and collapses. Officially, the reason for this is unknown, with some vague religious stupidity about new farms being too far away from the center of the habitable strip. This was nothing new to me. I remembered feeling the joy of the sheer output from my first harvest, of wondering if I could finally make something of myself, a joy that had been whittled down as my last 2 harvests had been pitiful. However, there's an interesting thing. If you also plot the number of predator sightings during this time against the yields, you can see a direct correlation between number of predators and the success of each harvest. Wait, what? Is this human trying to say that predators increase harvest? That can't be right. That can't be right at all. That would be insanity. The data is literally there in front of you. Yet it was there on the screen. A second graph had appeared on the whiteboard, tracking predator sightings over time in each of the farms afflicted by the curse. This tracks with most farms' general life cycle. You buy a plot of untamed land on the edge of the habitable zone, but you don't have enough money to go full anti-predator. As the harvests come in, you end up spending more and inadvertently messing it up. This caused a small amount of murmuring and energetic rejection by myself and the other members of the room, wiping away the previous undercurrent of fear. It was insanity. It went against everything I had ever known or been taught about farming and how the world worked. How could a predator of all things be beneficial? Didn't the introduction of humans also go against everything I'd ever known or been taught about? If this effect is so obvious, how has nobody found this before? The sound of Avenlil challenging Joseph was greeted by murmurs of agreement from the group, causing the human to give a different kind of smile. Not a smile of joy or excitement, as had been seen before, but the smile of someone who had something for this. Because you have. 150 years ago, Avenlil named Slavek wrote a paper regarding this. 119 years ago, Viktal did the same, as well as Travel, Strahlen, and Vilken in between then and now. Those are just the ones I've found. Who can guess what happened to them? There was a pause before the uplift in the back spoke up for the first time, a surety in the Yotul's voice. They were diagnosed with predator disease. Joseph pointed at the Yotul in the back with both hands, the joy radiating from him. Based Space Kangaroo gets 10 points for being correct? Yep, the Federation has been actively suppressing anything that suggests that predators are more than some kind of eldritch evil. That and your surprising lack of hydroponics causes most planets to be dependent on the core worlds for food imports, probably by design for control. Wait, that's a good point. Why aren't we using hydroponics? The human took a moment to switch to the next slide, showing a simple 3-part cycle. Most healthy ecological systems are made up of 3 parts: plants, which are eaten by herbivores, which are in turn eaten by carnivores. In reality, actual systems are far more complex than these, but as a basic understanding, this will suffice. These 3 parts keep each other in check, each part dependent on the other, which... Even worse, these things have basically zero fear response to noises and large beasts, probably due to all major predators having been removed. As you can see, this specimen doesn't mind a scary predator grabbing it. As long as it has food, it couldn't care less. This makes pest control tricky, as scaring them away is no longer an option. Poisons would be used in such a case, but they can have wider-ranging effects, and poisoning prey is considered predatory. Not that many of you haven't tried accidentally leaving potential pesticides out. This caused a sway of discomfort to sweep through the room, tails switching in guilty movements as everyone tried to hide the truth of this human's words. I knew I personally had considered such actions in desperation. I mean, would accidentally leaving out a known poisonous chemical really be a sign of predator disease? Ha! I know enough tail language to know I'm right. That's guilt, isn't it? I've read your internet. I know your discussions on loopholes about what is and isn't predatory. Joseph cried out in triumph as many of the Venlil of the room reached out to grab their traitorous appendages. Now, normally I would just tell people to stop being idiots, but in this case we can't do that. Ironically, because predators are actually dangerous. Because of your slaughter, the only species left are ones aggressive and smart enough to survive. Shade stalkers are legitimately dangerous and can't be left to interact with the farming community because people will die. The words from Joseph all sounded so reasonable at this point. However, I, along with the rest of the room, were all desperately waiting for the other paw to drop. Because there would be, humans always had something they were about to do. Almost in response to our thoughts, the human placed the second container on the desk, covering up the first in response. Humans have dealt with this problem in a simple way, a way that our Yotul friend over there will know of. I need all of you to please remain calm and orderly, and to remember that you're perfectly safe, and there's no need to overreact or panic. Humans dealt with this pest problem through the use of safe predators. Before anyone could properly react to those words, the cover of the second container was removed, showing a predator, an actual one, not a human, but an actual real threat. Small, piercing, front-facing yellow eyes attached to a brown feline form, sulking from the cage it was being held in. Spare, 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 spare. That's a predator, a feral predator. If it was a danger, the human wouldn't have. No, 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 do not like no, 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 no. The panic in the room was immediate. Sapient human predators we had gotten used to, but non-sapient ones were another deal entirely. Chaos started to spread as the 7 in the front row got up, pushing themselves up against the back wall as everyone else in the room did the same. 3 Venlil made the choice to bolt out of the room, rushing past the human and his tiny devourer, while another clean fainted, hitting the floor with a thud. One even decided to take things further, jumping out of the singular window attached to the far wall in a frantic motion. I could feel fear overwhelm me, desperately staring at the feline and waiting for it to make its move. What was the human thinking? It was going to attack at any moment. It was going to stop! Stop this stupidity! Right! Now! The stern, commanding voice of Joseph caused everyone in the room to freeze. The calm, enthusiastic demeanor of the predator was gone, replaced with an emotion I'd never actually seen a human show before: anger. It has been 6 months. Do you really still believe that the UN or the Venlil government would put you in actual danger? You're still thinking based on your stupid fascist Federation propaganda, thinking that tells you that the Yotul are primitive or the Venlil are weak. Propaganda that says genetically modifying people against their will is morally okay. I knew that humans normally bared their teeth in joy as a sign of happiness and friendship. This wasn't the case right now, as everything in Joseph's body language screamed of rage, of pain, of words spoken through gritted teeth. Nobody in the room was focused on the predator in the cage at this point, instead all eyes staring at the human. Suddenly, the feline mattered a lot less than the anger of the human. That sort of thinking leads to the belief that killing over 1 billion innocent people is somehow the right thing to do. You are all presumably intelligent, sapient adults able to think things through logically. Could you all please act that way? I could see the swishes of shame from the other Venlil's tails, everyone in the room avoiding eye contact guiltily. Well, apart from the Yotul, who had remained seated and calm this entire time, staring almost joyfully at the feline predator. The human, of course, was completely right. Taking a moment to force myself to think, the predator was safely behind metal bars and was making no move to attack, seemingly content to stare lazily at us. You finished overreacting? Shut up, brain. Also, at the risk of ruining the angry vibe I'm giving off, is the guy who jumped out the window okay? Jesus Christ, we are 2 stories up. Do we have to call someone or... Joseph had relaxed a little in response to the group calming down, allowing the normal, empathetic nature of humans to come through once more. Slowly, I made my way to the window, looking down to see a singular Venlil running off into the distance. I think he's fine, I responded, causing the human to give a sigh of relief in response. Good. Note to self, do this in a room without windows next time. Or maybe just the ground floor. So, to continue where I left off, humans have used tame predators as a natural, non-invasive form of pest control since we started farming. This is a cat. Completely harmless unless you're a small rodent or bird. They also have this effect. With a flourish, Joseph removed the covering for the cage containing the flower bird once more. The red little avian had been busily eating during the entire presentation so far. However, upon spotting the feline predator, did something none of us had ever seen before. It stopped eating. Wait, the human managed to get a flower bird to stop eating? I didn't even know that was possible. Giving repeated alarmed chirps, it moved as far away as it could from the predator, still trapped inside the small cage, a frantic fear obvious on the poor little thing. Joseph let this go on for a few moments more before dropping the cover back on and silencing the flower bird once more. Everyone in the room was shocked. You could literally scream and shout all you wanted at the dumb little birds, and they would ignore you and continue to devour crops. The fact that the feral predator had managed to stop the bird from doing that simply with its presence was huge, was more than huge. As you can see, the instincts of the prey animals still remain. Presumably, whatever predator used to hunt these flower birds has a resemblance to our cats. Normally, it would be sacrilege to suggest introducing cats to an ecosystem, but in this case, your ecosystems are so messed up that's exactly what we want to do. Provide any farmer who wants one with a kitten in order to quickly reduce yield lost to pests. I would be lying if I didn't say I wasn't interested. On the one hand, having a vicious predator in my house, where my pups would visit, seemed like something a predator-diseased individual would only consider. On the other hand, nothing else I had ever tried had even come close to the simple effectiveness shown here. Would I be this desperate and in debt if I had one of these cats already? So I can see you're all still a little worried, so we're going to have a little discussion for which I need a volunteer. The Yotul in the back practically fell over with excitement, with his arm raised immediately as he interrupted, causing Joseph to give a small smile. One who isn't a Yotul. I know your history with similar pets, and we are totally going to hook you up with a cat, but for this I could do with a Venlil, please. The Yotul sat back down, a look of disappointment plastered over his face as the rest of the room shifted uncomfortably. Nobody wanted to be the person to step up and presumably get closer to the predator. Until I found myself raising my hand. Brain, what the hell are you doing? You said you wanted to be better, and we're desperate. Not like this, Brain. In a blur, I found myself being introduced to the room and being told to sit at a chair next to the desk in front of the rest of the members here. Then, to my horror, Joseph opened the cage and took the feline predator out of its holding cell. The human took a few moments to fuss over the beast before turning to the rest of us. So now that we have our volunteer, let's logically look at our dangerous predator. The first thing to notice is simply the size. Regardless of anything else, size matters. Size matters a lot. It's hard to feel threatened by something that you can literally throw across the room. Joseph took a moment to hold the small creature next to me for context, highlighting just how small the predator actually was. Barely the size of a skivet, like a furry little pup. Logically, if it wasn't for the forward-facing eyes, I might consider it cute. But what about its teeth and claws? It's a predator that will tear people apart. The voice of the Gojid sounded out, a shrill, fearful voice filled with barely contained panic and fear, the source of the sound looking ready to flee even though they weren't the ones sitting next to the predator. Let's compare these. Telek, can you please extend your paws and show your claws to the group? I did as asked, my 4 black claws visible for all to see as Joseph moved the predator close. He stretched out one of its paws and pressed on a knuckle, a singular sharp claw protruding as he did so, causing a fresh burst of fear to erupt in my heart from being so close to such a thing. Although, if I was to be fully honest, if I was comparing the two, the predator's claw were, as you can see, the cat's claw, while sharper, is far smaller and more brittle. A Venlil can do some serious damage with their claws, while the worst this cat's claw could do is break the skin. The teeth are similar. If you could show the group your pearly whites, please. I again did as asked, feeling embarrassed and weird just having my mouth wide open in front of everyone. I hoped that there was nothing stuck in my teeth. While I did, Joseph manhandled the cat again, taking a moment to move the lips and display the sharp needle-point teeth, doing so for a moment before the small predator gave a small, lazy growl of annoyance. clearly reaching the end of its acceptability. Once again, we have similar results. Notice the small size of the cat's teeth compared with the Venlil's. These would pierce skin. The Venlil's would pulverize bone. Gojid aren't much better with your literal claws and a back full of knives. Ironically enough, the two predators in the room are probably the least physically imposing. There was a moment as the room seemed to ponder this statement, allowing Joseph enough time to place the cat on the desk next to me, the predator promptly giving a stretch, then curling up into a ball. The human was right. Even humans themselves were physically underwhelming, apart from their endurance. No claws, small teeth, no defensive armor or spines. It's kind of sad to think the only reason we're all so scared of humans is their eye placement. Now, the UN and Venlil government are looking for people to use cats as pest control to increase farming yield with an initial trial size of about 100 participants. We're offering a stipend for food, instructional care of your kitten, and as much support as needed. There are risks. For instance, you're going to need warning signs near your property and a containment system, as cats are actually dangerous to the dosur. I could hardly hear Joseph speak. My entire concentration focused on the predator right next to me. I knew logically that the human wouldn't do something to bring me to harm, but it was difficult to think that with a potentially feral predator right next to me. I saw its eyes fixate onto mine, and I quickly looked away. Maybe if I don't look at it, it won't take it as a challenge. However, much to both mine and the rest of the room's shock, slowly and carefully the cat stood up, stretched once before walking purposefully towards me, the room erupting into cries of worry as it leapt off the desk and onto my lap, curling into a ball with me trapped underneath. Help! Help! The human turned to look at me, breaking into a smile, seemingly at my misfortune and giving a small chuckle. "Oh, she likes you. As you all can see, cats share a lot of characteristics with prey. They will often seek companionship from others and have a lot of prey characteristics, being at times skittish due to having many natural predators." That was good and all, but didn't stop me from being trapped under the beast. I don't want to think about what could cause a predator to become prey. What do I do? Joseph gave a small shrug in response, clearly amused by my reaction. "You could try petting her. Her name is Sprinkles, and I can confirm she likes pets. You see, Brain, this is what happens when I let you do things. Now I'm trapped by a predator and I'm gonna die. Stop being such a pup, the thing is tiny. Besides, don't humans claim petting stuff is nice?" Slowly I reached out a paw, gingerly approaching the predator, those yellow slitted eyes regarding my exposed arm as I gently placed it on the cat, running my paw across its back. I felt my held breath release as the predator did nothing, some of the tension of the room releasing in the instant. So interesting thing about cats, they chose to be domesticated. Joseph had gone back to talking, seemingly happy that I wasn't about to be torn apart. I had stopped listening, entirely focused on keeping the predator satisfied by running my paws across its fur. Isn't this nice? I gotta admit, I understand why humans like doing this. Fine. I'll admit that this isn't unpleasant, the cat is rather soft. When humans originally started farming, that also attracted pests. Cats just turned up following their food source. They stuck around because humans would feed them and provide companionship. I was entirely focused on the cat at this point, running my claws through the fur, feeling the predator press itself against my paw, seeming to be enjoying itself. Gently, I moved my claw to the back of one of its tiny little ears, scratching behind it like you might do to comfort a young pup. It started to emanate a low vibrating noise in response, causing another wave of tension to emit from the rest of the room. For some reason, even though this feral predator was sitting on my lap, the sound seemed to vibrate through my heart in a calming motion. Maybe this is some kind of predatory hypnosis. Really? Just shush and enjoy this. Being scared of everything all the time is so tiring. Nobody needs to worry. That is just the sound a happy cat makes. It's called purring. Although I do need to take Sprinkles back now. Joseph motioned towards the cat on my lap, a motion I decided to ignore, enjoying petting the purring cat for a few moments more. Eventually, the human reached down and removed Sprinkles from my grasp as I momentarily resisted before letting the feline go. See, that wasn't so bad. Brain, I will admit, reluctantly, that I would have preferred to keep doing that. With a small amount of resentment, I watched as Joseph placed the cat back inside the cage before turning back to the rest of the room. So anyone who is interested, stick around and we can get the paperwork completed. In the end, 8 of us remained, 5 Venlil, 2 Gojid, and obviously the Yotul. We had spent the last half a claw having instructions and paperwork thrust upon us. Many of the group had immediately left, with others dropping out as various facts of cat ownership became apparent. Still, those of us who were left behind were now heading to our respective farms, each with a single carry case. Mine was currently containing a gray and black kitten, which had been meowing loudly during the entire journey. I looked simply at the little bundle of fur and eyes that peered out from inside the cage I had been given. Part of my mind still screamed danger, but it was a part that was getting quieter and quieter as I continued to look at what was a small, fragile bundle of fur that I was now ultimately in charge of. How could you look at something that's hardly bigger than your paw and think it's a danger? As I reached my farm, I finally opened up the container and pulled out the tiny predator. My tiny predator. There would be work to do, fences to erect and warning signs to place, but for now I just held the tiny thing in my paws, supporting it in the way I'd been told to. I now knew why humans spent all their time trying to pet things. With the troubles on the farm, I hadn't felt this calm in several cycles. He was more energetic than Sprinkles had been, but in a way, the more skittish nature pulled at my heartstrings as if it was a small, innocent Venlil pup. I sat there stroking it, realizing I still needed to give him a name. He was fluffy, tiny, innocent, fragile, yet with an underlying spice as it continued to meow loudly as I held in my paws. "I will call you Fireberry, my little predator,"